Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. All right, welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast, where we celebrate stories of resilience. Our guest today is Rudy Garcia-Tolson, who will blow you away in terms of resilience, in terms of enthusiasm, in terms of, he's here, hopefully qualifying, we'll see, hopefully qualifying for Tokyo, 4-time Paralympian, 5-time medalist, first double amputee, double above the knee amputee to do Kona, to do the Ironman in Kona. Rudy, thank you for joining us in the midst of all your training. Can you know what? Well, first, welcome. And then we're going to get into what you just did just recently. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Chris. I think the first time we met, I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And then I think we were able to share the same Paralympic team back in 2004, which I think was your last game. So yeah, when I was told that Chris wanted to chat, I was super excited. So thank you for having me.
This is amazing. Yes, you were 16 and I think I was 36, which kind of made sense. So yes, I was on my way out, you were on your way in, going to world records and gold medals and all of those things, which was, it was fun to share games and fun, I think in some ways, to share Athens as a games too, just because of the history of, where it all started, where everything began. Not necessarily the Paralympics, but the ideals. So Tokyo became a little bit different for you, right? The thing is that we hear all these athletes who are saying, well, it changed my training. I was all prepared for 2020. But when did you make the decision that you wanted to at least entertain qualifying for 2021?
Absolutely. This time last year, I was living and working in New York City. I worked for the New York Roadrunners, a running organization that puts on the New York City Marathon among many other events in the city. And they have a small program for kids with disabilities. And I stepped into that role to manage the wheelchair training program for kids with physical disabilities. And it was some of the most fun I've had in a long time, being able to not be an athlete, but to be a coach to some younger kids who if they so choose, would be Paralympic athletes in the near future. So just a cool experience being able to coach and be on the other side of the athlete-coach relationship. But then in March of last year, COVID hit, and the one day, we were working in the office, and then the next day we were working from home. And I worked from my apartment in Williamsburg in Brooklyn for about 4 months. And being in New York City during a global pandemic was very eerie. It was one of those things where I went out maybe once a week to go to the grocery store. And when I got to the grocery store, there was a line outside. And it just these type of things you just don't expect. You're not ready for them. But I will say one of the coolest parts about being in New York City during the global pandemic was every day at 7 p.m., everybody would go out to their balconies or windows and just clap and cheer. And they were doing it to thank the frontline workers, the people who still had to work to and ensure that we were able to get what we needed as civilians. And it's just one of those things where we really felt like we were all connected, even in a big city like New York City. And right around the same time, I believe it was in April or May of 2020, they announced that Paralympic and Olympic Games were going to be postponed 1 year. Now, this never happens. The Paralympics and Olympics are set in stone. Once every 2 years, Summer Games once every 4 years, and there's no adjusting the schedule. Everybody knows when it is. Maybe it's in early August or early September, but it's always the same time of year. And for that news to come out, right away in my mind, I thought, well, shoot, maybe maybe I could jump back in the pool and give it a go. You know what? At this point last year, I wasn't really thinking about swimming. I wasn't thinking about the Paralympics. I was ready to be watching the Paralympics from my couch, and you know, I thought about it a lot during that whole year of in 2019. That's when I really decided that I wasn't gonna go try to go for Tokyo. And that whole time there's always that little voice in my head that was like, man, are you gonna be okay with this? You're gonna be okay watching a swim, your main event, and knowing that you could have medaled in that, or you could have done really well. I think I would have struggled with that. So my ultimate decision came when I was in my apartment, and I decided that, what, I'm gonna go for it. Like, I'm young, but I'm not that young. I'm 32 years old now. I've been to the last 4 games. I have a lot of experience. I know my events. I know how to train. I'm gonna give it a go. But that was the easy part of saying I wanted to make it happen. The hard part came the next day when I didn't have a pool to swim in. There's no pools in New York City that you could swim in during a global pandemic. So I did what I thought would put me on the right track, and I would go for a run every day. I would go for a run. Now, my runs, I started doing them around 10 and 11 o'clock at night when there was no one out in the streets. I was able to run without a mask on in the streets, and I was very safe. I had nobody around me, and I built up a nice base to start with. And a few weeks later, I drove from New York to California, and my initial plan was, if I want to make this work, I need to get out to Colorado. I need to get to Colorado and hopefully earn a spot to train at the Olympic Training Center. For me, the Olympic Training Center has been my go-to for all my training out of all my games. Athens, Beijing, London, and Rio. I spent 2.5 years here in the Springs at the Olympic Training Center, focusing on my sport and my craft, and it worked out great. I was able to be very successful, and I recognized that from the start, that if I was gonna get to Tokyo, I'm gonna need to put myself in the best position. And so when I got out to California, this was back in July of 2020. I realized that it was going to be a lot more challenging to get into the training center because I haven't swam in 3 years. I haven't proved myself, and I was a little disappointed that they weren't going to work with me to train at the facility with the resident team. But with COVID and everything, it made it really challenging. And so when I was in California, I actually started going to the ocean. And that was my first time in the water. Wasn't in a pool, and I wasn't swimming. It was actually surfing. So I would drive to the ocean, maybe 4 or 5 days a week. And I'm only about an hour away from Newport Beach, where I usually go. And I would literally just surf about 2 hours a session. And that kind of got me back in the water. And it made it fun for me. But still, I was lacking a pool. I could not find a pool, even in Southern California. And it was a very a cool thing. I got a message in my Instagram from the manager of David Duchovny, who everybody knows is on the X-Files, super famous guy. And essentially David heard that I was searching for a pool, and David just built a new house out in Malibu, and he built a nice 25-yard pool for himself, a single lane 25-yard pool. And essentially he invited me to come out and use the pool as much as I wanted. And the cool part about this is that I actually met David back in 1998 at the Malibu Triathlon. And, I have a photo of me and him, and, I'm standing there, I think I'm like 8 years old, and he just got done with the Malibu Triathlon, and he was much younger at the time as well. And we got a photo. That was cool. And to me, it was crazy that more than 20 years later, he would reach out to me to offer me to train at his pool. So from August to November, I would drive from Riverside, California to Malibu, California, which is about, without traffic, an hour and 20 minutes. With traffic, 3 hours one way, no joke. And so I figured out that I needed to train, not during rush hour, because it was just unbearable getting down there practice at 5 o'clock in Malibu and having to drive 3 hours, probably going 10 miles an hour the whole time because of traffic in LA. It was just undoable. So I started, switching my schedule up and getting there a little earlier, being able to leave earlier. And it was one of those things where I would text Mr. David and be like, "Hey, does this time work?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, sure." And I would go, and he would give me the gate code to his house, and I would go in, and I would go right to the pool and set my stuff up and my little speaker with my clock. And essentially I went to work, but I wasn't grinding, because I realized that jumping back into the pool after 3 years of not being in the pool, it could be a recipe for an injury. And I had no time for injuries. I had no time to get hurt or any of that stuff. So really, the first 2 months of being in the pool, I just swam and swam and swam and just kind of mentally got back into it. And the time came in October where I needed to get to Colorado. So I drove out to Colorado, and I've been here since, and essentially I've been training a Lifetime Fitness nearby, and doing my gym at a nearby gym of my buddy who's an Olympic weightlifter. So I'm in good hands with my strength. And then I'm doing a lot of cardio as well, running, doing a lot of hiking, really any and everything to stay in shape. So that's kind of where I am now. It's been challenging, getting back into it, but if it wasn't for COVID, I would still be in New York right now. So it's almost like a double-edged sword, because of COVID, I'm here in Colorado training for Tokyo. But because of COVID, there might be a possibility that, not because of my performance, but because of classification, I won't be able to make the Tokyo team. So, all in all, I can't listen too much to the noise. I'm just going to continue to train and do what I got to do, and essentially focus on what I can control. So that's kind of where we're at now, Chris.
Well, this has been a wild ride. I mean, you're talking about, you took us in a short period of time from coaching in New York. And the question with that is, what were you doing? Were you fit while you were coaching? Were you working out? Because you made the decision to go back into training for the Paralympics. But, what kind of a base? And then you started running, then you started surfing, then you started hanging out with David Duchovny. So I mean, this is a crazy story to start off with. Were you fit, I guess, is the first question. No, not at all.
When I was living and working in New York City, my fitness was going to work and coming home. Now let me get you to understand. New York City, you're taking the subway from Williamsburg to the Manhattan, and then in Manhattan you got to do a change and you go up Midtown. It used to take me about an hour and 30 minutes to get to work every day via subway. And when you're in New York City, you have to deal with the stairs. And it's just one of those things where, after a full day of getting to work and going to my other job and then going back home and then going back to work and all in one day, I mean, I was walking like 5 or 10 miles a day. So essentially my workout was just my everyday routine. Now, as we all know, that's not necessarily a athletic routine. So in essence, I started from nothing. I had no base whatsoever. I wasn't in 2020. I never touched a pool until I decided to come back. And my first pool was David Duchovny's pool. And I think in July and August, or July or August, that's when I got back into the pool. So essentially 2019, I didn't do nothing. I think I did a few runs here and there, maybe a swim once or twice a month, but I literally had no base whatsoever. And to me, that's the fun part, that's the journey to getting back into shape.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you might want to talk to David Duchovny and see if they want to do a movie on this, because this sounds like a movie where you're running in the middle of the night, then you're out there surfing. You're a California guy, so this is the non-traditional training. And how did David's manager find out? Because you met him as a little kid.
Yeah.
So this 24 years ago or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
So
So
you met him.
around when I decided to come back into the Paralympics, the New York Times did an article about me coming back out of retirement. So they said, even though I never really retired, I was just, essentially taking a break. But the New York Times ran an article about me driving from New York to California and not being able to find a pool and only having the ocean to train in. And David happened to read this article. And at the time when David read this article, I don't think he realized that I don't think he remembered meeting me all those years back. So when the manager reached out to me and said, David Duchovny has a pool and offers to, let you train in it, I said, wow, David Duchovny, here's a photo of us. And so I sent her the photo of us back in 1998, and she was just blown away. Like, wait a minute, this is crazy. And she sent that photo to David, and he says that he remembers after seeing the photo. And I mean, when you see a guy with two prosthetic legs, at a race, it's something that you're probably going to remember. You just need a little refresher. And so he essentially read that New York Times article and just out of being a nice person, just offered me the opportunity to train there without even remembering that we met, all those years back. So that to me, that tells you a lot about who Mr. David is,
I would imagine. So did you guys have any interaction? This is the height of COVID. So
Oh, yeah.
are you just kind of entering and going to the pool, or?
We chatted every day. He was always mostly home, working from home there, and every day would always, we'd have a small conversation, or he would be in his gym, which was right next to the pool, and he would be doing Pilates or stretching or some type of activity, and he unfortunately he never wanted to swim with me. And I always offered, like, David, come on, let's get in the pool. And he would always say, nah, I'm good. But, he actually uses that pool every day, and he swims like 2 or 3 grand a practice. So he's in very good shape. And, it was just, we just became kind of cool friends. It was just one of those things where, I didn't go there to chat. I didn't go there to try to go into his house or anything. I went there to swim, and I left. There was no, let's hang out and have a barbecue, or could I hang out in the sun? No, I'm going there, I'm taking care of business, and I'm out. And I think he respected that. And I think that's why I was able to continue to train it at his house. I think I trained there for about 2 or 3 months. And even still today, he always texts me, hey, how's it going, Rudy? What's going on? So I always keep him updated on how everything's going, and I'm just very grateful, and I let him know that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for his generosity. So he's definitely turned into a pretty cool friend.
That's awesome. Now it's not a traditional path that you've taken to the games. And then was it this past weekend or the weekend prior where you had to do a qualifying time, right? What did you
Yep.
have to do to run a qualifying time, or to swim a qualifying time, in order to get close? I mean, is it for the trials? It's not for the trials yet.
Not for the trials. It's for essentially it's like nationals, I would say. It's a world para swimming stop. Paralympic swimming now has a world series where there's a competition in another country every so few weeks, kind of similar to like the Diamond League. And so essentially this competition next weekend in Texas is just a way to show people that, hey, I'm here, guys, like I'm back. I'm swimming fast, and I have my goals in mind. And I found out, when I went to go sign up for this competition, I realized that I haven't competed in the last 3 years. And you need to have a qualifying time in the last 2 years to be able to attend the competition next weekend. So essentially, I was on a deadline. Um, I found out about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago that I wasn't going to be able to go there because I don't have a time. So essentially, I was on a search to try to figure something out. Where can I find a 50-meter pool that was USA Swimming certified? Well, there's not many out there. It's definitely nothing in Colorado, nothing in California. Thankfully, in Indiana and Indianapolis, they had a Speedo sectional swim meet for some of the fastest age group swimmers in Indiana. And thankfully, I was able to reach out to Mrs. Thomas from USA Swimming, and she was able to reach out to the meet director, Arlene, who very graciously allowed me to jump into the 200 IM on the last day to swim just the prelim session, just so I can get a time. And so essentially, I had to drive 17 hours to jump in the pool, to swim 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and then go back in the car to come back to Colorado Springs to continue my training. So it was a little frustrating because the qualifying time that I needed was about a minute and a half slower than my best time. So I essentially could have swam this with my eyes closed in the dark, right when I woke up, whatever. I could have swam this. Even if I was in the worst shape of my life, I still could have made this qualifying time. So I was a little disappointed that they weren't able to offer me the chance to just do a virtual swim, record myself swimming. It's the same thing, nothing's changing, the pool is the same length. But they were pretty stiff on the rules, and they didn't make too many considerations. Now they did make a consideration to allow me to compete at next week's Paralympic meet, because the entry deadline was way past, so they did give me the discretion to compete next weekend. So it's at the end of the day, I would have driven to Florida if there was a meet down there that they were going to allow me to swim. Now the reason why I had to drive is because the University of Indiana wasn't allowing athletes to fly in because of COVID. And if they did fly in, they would have to do a 2-week quarantine. Well, I found out on the Wednesday that I was going to be able to swim on Sunday. So essentially, it was just like, okay, I'm good. All right, let's go. And drove out there, came back.
Was this one day? Did you drive
I did it
in 1 day?
I did it in 2 days. I think I did it in 2 days. So still, you don't feel the best when you've been driving 17 hours and you have to jump into the pool. But it didn't matter. I was going to do what I had to do to get that qualifying time so I can go to the next week's Paralympic World Nationals and make a statement. Let people know that I'm here, I'm focused, I'm hungry, and I want to make my 5th Paralympic team.
What's the process now? So you go to this meet, to the nationals effectively this weekend, and you're swimming pretty fast. Is that right? It sounds like you are.
My time in Indianapolis did put me on the national team. It put me on a low tier of the national team, but it still put me on the national team. And my performance was definitely nowhere near my best, but in consideration of having to drive 17 hours and not really tapering for this competition, I felt that it was a solid time. And again, I wasn't expecting to go PR or anything. Again, all I needed to do was just to qualify in this one event. So yeah.
Wow. So then you have the nationals this weekend, and
Yep.
then are the trials in June?
Yes, so nationals or World Series, nationals, whatever you want to call it, the Paralympic meet next month in Texas, next week in Texas, and then the next step is going to be trials in June. I'm in a challenging situation because of COVID. I wasn't able to travel last year to get a standard or a qualifying time. And so my first competition essentially was Indiana. And, because I was so late in the game, Paralympic swimming is doing a lot of changes, and they've changed a lot of the classification back in 2017 because there's been so much problems with classification in Paralympic swimming. It's ridiculous. You have athletes who are misrepresenting their disability. So you'll have an athlete who has a neural issue, and when they go in for their classification, they won't take their medicine that day. So it makes it look like their disability is much worse than it is. And then on race day, they're 100% kicking with 2 legs and 2 arms, working perfectly fine. And that plagued the Paralympics. And it started in London in 2012. And from 2012 to 2016, it just got out of hand. And you had athletes in classifications that shouldn't be there. You had athletes who got reclassified. And just by off of a reclassification, they went from being 20th in the world to being a world record holder just off of a change, and I think Paralympics, they just got so much negative feedback from that they decided to just reclassify everybody. Now, this was back in 2017. And again, I'm so late into the game. It's looking like at this moment, it's looking like that I'm not going to be able to get reclassified before Tokyo. And it's looking like I might miss the Paralympic team, not because of my performance, but because of classification. And it's a little challenging, a little discouraging, but Chris, at the end of the day, I can only focus on what I can do, and that's my performance, and that's my attitude, and that's my training.
So could you?
But it will be very disappointing.
Could you be in a different class? How does it? Because you got your legs amputated as a little kid.
Sure.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing.
Right. So could you be in a different class? Have they reconfigured the classes so that you might be in a different class than you'd competed in for the last 4 Paralympic Games?
Absolutely. And this is the kicker of the whole thing. My disability has not changed since I've had my legs amputated. Now, I got classified, and this was a permanent classification back in 1997 or 1998, back when I first started swimming. And that's been my classification my whole career. Now, with this reclassification going on, I've been told that my class will change. And my main event, which has been the 200 individual medley, which is how I know is that race. And
tell people what the 200 IM is, though.
Sure. 200 IM is a 50 of each stroke. So you swim butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, and freestyle. So it's a little bit of everything. You got to be good at it all. And you got to have that endurance, because it's not really a sprint. So essentially, they're telling me that I will no longer be competitive in my main events, and I will have to focus on the 100 breaststroke, because my classification will go down in the breaststroke, but it will go up in the individual, the IM. So it's very, very interesting, but I'm okay with that. My breaststroke, I'm a very solid breaststroker. I'm the current American record holder in the breaststroke. I feel very confident that if I'm able to perform at my best, I can be on the podium in Tokyo in that 100 breaststroke. But unfortunately, it's not my call. My performance won't dictate anything, and to me that's a hard part to swallow. I was always content of, if I don't make Tokyo because of my performance, I can live with that. I know that I went and I did everything I could, and it just wasn't enough. Okay, I'm okay with that. But this whole thing of not being able to go to the Paralympics because I'm not classified, it's a little bit of a challenge. But Chris, I'm staying positive. If for some reason Tokyo doesn't work out, I'm not going nowhere. I'm focusing on 2022 World Championships and 2024 Paralympics in Paris. So.
What have you learned in your time off? Are you coming to the sport fresh and obviously with your unorthodox, can I call it unorthodox training?
Yep.
What have you learned? that's
What have
different?
I
Do you have
learned?
some perspective?
Um, what have I learned is it's a process. You can't look at the bad days as your overall, experience and just where you are. One of the things that I've learned in my training is that you have to stay patient, and for me as a young athlete growing up, going to Athens and Beijing as a young guy, patience was nowhere near me. I was impatient. I wanted to get things done. I wanted to go, go, go. And through my training over the last year, I've realized that I need to be patient and take it one day at a time and not look at the bad days as an overall where I'm at. Because those bad days, when you get a little bit older and you start getting back into training, the bad days seem to be more than the good days sometimes. So really just developing that sense of I will get to where I need to be, but I just need to be patient and I need to be smart. I think that's another thing that I've learned is I need to, obviously my training has been a little unorthodox, like you mentioned, but I need to be smart because I only have two shoulders. I don't have any knees. I don't have any legs. So I need to make sure that when I get out in the ocean and I'm surfing and I catch a wave, that I'm not going to tweak my arm. If I'm out hiking, I'm not going to fall and hurt myself or anything. So, just being smart about what I was doing and more importantly, being smart in the water. And everybody knows, when you develop an injury, it's because of some technique issues that you're not getting right. Your elbows dropping too low, you're entering too much with your thumb, whatever it is. An injury is a real thing that could happen, and that to me that was just something that I didn't have time for. So I just had to be smart with what I was doing, but also put in the work and feel confident that I was putting in the right work, because at this point I'm training by myself. I don't have a coach right now. I'm doing everything on my own as my experience from the last 20 years. And I feel confident.
What's the passion part of it? I mean, you're coming back to this because you want to be here. You're saying is a brave heart is a powerful weapon.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And does that apply to what you're doing right now?
So absolutely. I was content working and living in New York City. I had a great job. I had great jobs. I had 3 or 4 jobs that I was working, coaching, and everything. And it was looking like, to me, for a moment there in New York City, it was looking like this was going to be it. It was looking like I was going to, continue to do well in my job and hopefully get promoted and live in New York City. And in a little bit in a way that scared me a little bit. It scared me because I didn't want to settle. And I realized that settling for me was going to be probably the end of my sporting career. And I couldn't fathom that. Sports has been my life since far as I can remember. My passion for the pool and the water goes beyond just swimming. I mean, anything in the water I love. And, to me, I when I was, in my apartment in New York and wondering if I should do this or not, at the end of the day, I said, why not? I'm not going to be able to have this situation again. I'm not going to be able to replay this year or anything. And I realized that, what? I am going to make this decision on my own. And to me, that was a lot. To me, it was very liberating to say, this is what I'm going to do. And it came all from me. I didn't have any outside voices telling me what I should do and what I shouldn't do. This was just me. And that felt great. And I loved that. So yeah.
No, that's perfect. The coaching part is interesting, right? Because you've been in the public eye since the time you were little, right? Since you were 8 years old. This is when your relationship with the Challenge Athletes Foundation started, and you became, their
the poster boy.
I was not going to say that, but you did say it. You became their poster boy, their featured athlete. What does it mean to you to be a mentor?
Chris, it's been I've been involved in the Challenge Athletes Foundation since I was 8 years old. And when I was 8 years old, I just was just a deer caught in the headlights. I was just amazed by the opportunities that came to me through the Challenge Athletes Foundation, through FlexFoot, Oser, the prosthetic company who supported me from day one. I was just amazed that I was able to run and ride a bike and swim and go to all these races and go to San Diego and meet other people like me. So I never went into this in the mindset of, all right, I want to be an inspiration, or I want to be a role model I want to be a mentor to the younger kids. Like that was never my thought. And even when I became a little bit older in my 20s, I somewhat always rejected the idea of me being a role model or a mentor. And that's something that people really didn't see, because when I showed up to the CAF events, it was always a smile and it was always positive. But at the end of the day, I did feel like I lost a little bit of my childhood, being in the spotlight, being the poster boy. And when I was in high school, I used to wear pants every day. I used to wear my hoodie. I just didn't want people to see me. I wanted to hide. I just wasn't comfortable with who I was. I was always wondering, why me? Why me? That the pity, and it wasn't until I was probably in my mid-20s that for some reason it just clicked on me that if I can motivate and inspire somebody, that is awesome. Like there's nothing better in the world than being able to motivate and inspire somebody, and especially a young athlete who is like me in a sense, who has a physical challenge. That to me, there's nothing more powerful, nothing more greater. Yeah, medals are cool, records are fun, Paralympic teams are great, but when you're able to help a young child who's struggling with their self-image, and when you're able to help a young person realize their full potential through sport, that's the greatest reward. And now I firmly believe, now I'm in this position, I'm 32 years old now, that it's my responsibility, it's a duty as a Paralympic athlete, as an Ironman finisher, as a CAF spokesman, to continue down the path that I'm living. Because there are people out there who need to see what we do, and they need to see that life is going to be hard. There's going to be some challenging days, but you have to continue forward. You have to continue pushing towards those goals and those dreams of yours. And like I said, it's one of the coolest things that I've been able to be a part of. It's very humbling, because a lot of times when I'm out in my day, just at the store or at the gym, people come up to me on a daily basis and they say, "Wow, that's cool. You've inspired me." Well, the story. And I'm always very grateful at those situations, because that's powerful. That's going to carry on, and that's going to help somebody else down the line. And it's very interesting, because Chris, there's a lot of Paralympic athletes today who just cringe at the word of inspiration, and cringe when someone comes up to them and says, "Oh wow, that's so cool that you're out." And I get that. There's nothing inspiring about going to the grocery store, with two prosthetics or in a wheelchair. That we're just living life. But if somebody can be inspired and motivated by that, then let it be. That is an amazing thing. It does nothing to you. It doesn't cost you anything. Now, if you have self insecurities about your disability, then I can understand why you get mad about that person who's just trying to be positive and in front of you. So it's interesting, because I used to be that person who would get mad, or I would smile and say thank you, but in my mind, I'd be like, "Man, what do you mean I'm an inspiration? I'm just doing what I do."
Leave me alone.
But you gotta see the other side of it as well.
Well, also, you have the kids who are following behind you, right? How did you have to learn everything that you learned, right? The running, the swimming, those kinds of things. What kind of help can you give them?
Absolutely. That's the biggest part to me. When I was growing up, I never met somebody else who was like me until I met Roderick Sewell. And this was when I was 12 years old, and Roderick was probably 8 or 9. And, to be able to see somebody who looks like you is a game changer. When I was growing up, I never could relate to Michael Jordan or any of the professional football or baseball players. Like I never seen anything that, obviously they work hard and they're good at what they do, but I just never could relate to them. And it wasn't until I got around, other challenge athletes that I really started to feel comfortable. But the big part is when I was growing up, I had nobody to look to ask questions, to figure a way to do things. I essentially had to figure it all out by myself. And from swimming to skateboarding to surfing to riding a bike to running, it was all just trial and error, figuring out how can I get just a little bit faster, a little bit faster. And that to me is where I'm able to pass that knowledge along to these younger kids who are growing up now in front of our eyes, kind of like how I grew up in front of your eyes, and really watch them blossom into whatever they choose to do, whether it's academics, whether it's sports. Knowing that you played a small part in that child's development is very rewarding. That's the best thing ever. And these kids that are growing up now, they're going to be breaking all of our records. They're going to be winning the next gold medals. So to be able to help those guys out, to me, it's a responsibility.
It's a responsibility. And the thing is, you can make their lives that much easier, right? I mean, you're talking about they're going to break your records, and they're going to break your records based partially on the experience that you had.
Yep.
What was the limelight part of it? Because you were thrust into the limelight as an 8-year-old, right? Because the Challenge Athletes Foundation, the big fundraiser is the triathlon, and you were teamed with Robin Williams, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What was that like? And to being one in the limelight, but two, what did you teach him? Because I'm sure he told you stuff that you taught him.
Absolutely. That it's thinking back on those days, the first San Diego Triathlon Challenges, and being able to be partnered with Robin Williams, the Robin Williams. I mean, this is the guy that I've watched all of my favorite movies, from Mrs. Doubtfire to Flubber to all of Jumanji. I mean, this guy was awesome. He was so funny. He was so just Robin Williams. And I first met Robin back at the Malibu Triathlon. I think the same year I met David Duchovny. And Mr. Robin did the Malibu Triathlon. I think he did the bike part, and I was able to meet him and say hi to him. And then I found out the next year that he was going to be coming to the Challenge Athlete Triathlon, and he was going to be on my team, and he was going to be riding the bike for me. And
so you'd swim, he'd bike, and then you had somebody else who ran. So it was a team triathlon.
Not somebody else. We had Scott Tenley, who is Ironman world champion, all around awesome dude. Scott Tenley. He did the run. So we were called Team Braveheart. And the first year it was just so overwhelming being able to just chat with Mr. Robin. And it was funny that when people think of a little 8-9-year-old kid who's missing his legs, and they think of Robin Williams, you're going to think, well, what can you possibly have in common with a big time movie star, probably one of the biggest movie stars in the world? But as soon as we sat down and started chatting, we came to a conclusion that we both love playing video games. And this is Robin Williams, and he knew every game that was out. He knew every system that was out, and he knew every game that was coming out. And we literally sat in a room just talking about video games for probably 30 minutes. And then, he was very interested in my legs too. And I would always take my leg off and let him hold it. And he would be making crazy jokes that at the time I didn't understand, but I'm sure now if I can hear them, I'm sure they're just hilarious. But that was cool. I really didn't have too much time to spend with them because the media were all over, the people were all over. They wanted autographs, they wanted a picture with them. So I really, the first year, was able to spend just a little time with them after the race. And then, this continued for 10 years in a row. And that to me was, I how lucky of a kid am I to be able to become friends with Robin Williams and to do races with Robin Williams. And, you know, I just felt like the luckiest kid in the world. You know, I couldn't, you know, I couldn't really believe it at the time. And even now, when I'm 32 years old now, and I think back, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I got to do this race with Robin Williams. And, you know, as we got a little bit older and I went to my first Paralympic Games in 2004, and in 2005 and six, I think was around the last time that he was able to come do the race. I remember one time when we sat in the room there at the beach house, and I could tell that he was a little tired of the media. He was a little tired of the pictures and the photos. And when he went back into this back room to sit at a table, you can tell that he just wanted to just relax and not have to smile and do all this. And I remember him leaning over to me and saying, Rudy, this is like, that's all just noise. You know, like what counts is what's inside, is your soul. Don't sell your soul out. And I remember him telling me this. And at the time, I didn't really remember, I didn't really comprehend what he was trying to tell me. But I think at the end of the day, he was trying to say, don't get caught up in the lights and cameras and stuff. Like, that's all cool and everything. But at the end of the day, what counts is who you are as a person and how you treat people on an everyday basis. And whether it's the janitor or the CEO, it's the consistency of just being a good person. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I took from Robin, is that he took the time to shake hands, take pictures with everybody. And he treated everybody the same. He treated the waiter, he treated everybody with respect and just gratefulness. And I remember that still to this day. And you know, I've kept in great contact with family. Cody, Robin's son, I went to his wedding a few years ago, and it's one of those things where we stay connected, and you know, we're just longtime friends. But yeah, that to me was unreal time, I would say.
Did he follow your career? Did you hear from him like when you went to your first games? And
I heard, it's so funny. I heard from him like periodically at random times. And I remember one time I was up in Portland doing a race, and I went on this TV show, like a live TV show, and they were like, oh, wait a minute, we have a special caller calling in. And he actually called in, but he was using his like Mrs. Doubtfire voice. And he was just saying all these things. And I was like, wait, who's that? And then finally he broke his voice and was like, it's me, Rudy. I just wanted to call and say we're proud of you and keep doing what you're doing. And of course, he would continue to send me video games. And that was the coolest thing, I think, as a young kid that you could ever experience. You know, when we had these long chats about video games, at the end of them, I remember him saying, all right, I'm gonna send you some games. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sure, you know, he's going to forget about it and it's not going to happen. But I swear, 3 weeks later, I got home from school. I think I was in like 6th or 7th grade. And I come home to this big old box, and it was heavy. And it didn't say who it was from. It just had my name on there. And I remember opening it up, and it was literally a box full of computer games, a brand new PlayStation, the first one that ever came out. And it just had, it was like like, I don't know, it was like winning the lottery almost. As a young kid, you know, I grew up in a trailer. I grew up very, very humble means, and my parents could never afford a PlayStation on computer games. And this box literally had like 20 video games with the system, with 2 or 3 controllers. And I mean, talking about the luckiest kid in the world, that was me there. And this continued throughout the years. And so it's funny, Bob Bevitt always says that Robin Williams was my video game pimp. So he would always just send me the games, and I would just play them all. And that to me was, I mean, he just made me the luckiest kid in the world.
but it's also interesting too. I mean, one of the things that he did for Challenge Athletes Foundation, for you, and also for the Paralympics was lending his star power, right? Coming and joining this and making it a much bigger event as a result of his star power. We saw some of that with one of your teammates in the Super Bowl this past year, right? So Jessica Long, you and Jessica are the two who have competed the longest, right? So 4 Paralympic games for swimmers. What did you know that was happening? Like when the Super Bowl was happening, did you know that she was going to have a commercial? Had you heard about it?
I had no idea that Jessica Long was included. She had her own commercial in a Super Bowl. I mean, this is like, you can't get no grander than that. And me and Jessica were on the 2004 team as the youngest male and female. And, I have been great friends with Jessica our whole careers. And to see her be in a Super Bowl commercial, it's just amazing, just very, very proud, but also just excited for what's to come next. And to see that a Paralympic athlete who's been so successful and to be able to continue to be successful and then to be able to get a Super Bowl commercial. I mean, it's great for Paralympic sport. Obviously it's great for her, but to me, that's just the beginning. We're making small gains in this Paralympic world. And that was a major gain, I would say.
It was a major gain, right? Because I mean, a lot of people watch the Super Bowl for the commercials, right?
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people watch it for the game, but then there are those people who watch it just for the commercials. And she happened to have that kind of a commercial, which the Paralympics now has considerably more publicity and coverage than it ever did, like back when I was competing and when you first started, even in 2004, it was minimal. And it was 2012 that I think it was still 3 hours of coverage.
Yeah. I remember, Chris, back in 2004, they used to tell us at U.S. Paralympics, they used to say, the media people, they would say, oh, Paralympic athletes are not marketable. No one can relate to a disabled guy, and that was the attitude around disability and disability sports was, people don't want to see you. Like, what do you mean? Like, there's no. And now, I mean, we're still not where we should be. We're not where the Olympic level is. But I mean, to be honest, what a way to put Paralympics on the map is Oscar Pistorius back in 2012, before the unfortunate events that happened. But with Oscar being a double below knee amputee and fighting for the right to be able to compete in the able-bodied Olympics and having to prove that his legs were not an unfair advantage, I think that reached more people than any other story in the Paralympic history. And by him going to the Olympics and running in the semifinals, it just brought a whole new world to the Paralympics. Now, unfortunately, that didn't last long. We all know what happened, and in my mind, it put Paralympics a little bit back, kind of pushed us back a little bit. But that's the reality of 2012. It was the story of the games, and that's, to me. Yeah.
It was. And what's interesting about what Oscar did is it brought a question that seems like an absurd question, right? Can your disability be an advantage with regard to able-bodied athletes?
Sure.
As a Paralympic athlete, for me, I looked at that and I said, you know what? That's a victory for us, just in that anybody's asking this question.
Absolutely. That was, and even still today, that question is now like asked more than ever now. There's, these guys with 2 blades, or these guys with a guy with a blade. Oh, of course he has an advantage. His legs don't get tired. Or, there's just the argument continues on. But at the end of the day, Chris, you cannot replace a human part of the body. With whatever technology that's out, it's not going to be able to replace that, no matter what. So, as you said, that's a victory. Having people being like, wait a minute, that's unfair. He's going too fast because of his legs, of course. to me, that's what we want to see, because that creates, awareness, and it creates that controversy. People love controversy, and I think that, as we continue forward, and a very interesting story that everybody should be watching is Blake Lieber, who has been fighting to go to the Olympic Games as the first American. Now, let me remind you, Blake Lieber ran a 44.4 in 2019, which would have put him on every Olympic team in history.
44
Now,
400 meter. Right.
Yep, for a 400 meter. Yes, sir. So as soon as that came out, as soon as he ran that race and went a 44.4 in the 400 meter, everybody said, no, 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 no way, no way. The guy has an unfair advantage. No one ever took the time to look at the story of where Blake came from, where he went, and where he's going. And you will understand that the man is a hard worker, unlike anybody else. And the man is a natural talent. And unfortunately, he tried to go to Tokyo Olympics, but they denied him, unfortunately. So I think the story's not over. I think we're going to see some amazing things in the near future.
Can you describe Blake and his disability, how he runs for the people who are listening?
Absolutely. So Blake is a double below knee amputee. So he's a T44, T43 maybe, and he essentially is a very fast American track athlete. He won I think a silver medal in the 400 in London behind Oscar Pistorius, and he went through some challenging times around Rio, but he was able to fight through those challenging times, and now he's in the best shape of his life. And like I said, people need to be watching, because this man is going to be making history in the Paralympic world, and we hope for in the Olympic world as well.
Right. And it's a great conversation. It's a great question for people. And we've got Hunter as well, who's running
amazing things. Absolutely.
Amazing things, running in the NCAAs as a double amputee as well. And so that to me is representative of these steps that we're taking. How much
Absolutely.
pride do you take as being part of that movement? I mean, you got super animated when you were talking about Blake. How much pride do you have, because you are a Paralympian, and granted, you're not doing the same things that he's doing, but as a member of the community, what does that mean to you?
I'm only playing a little part in something big, and that's it right there. I'm not trying to say that I did this and I'm that and that. No. We all know that this is a team effort. This is a effort of every Paralympic athlete and every disabled athlete. This has been an effort from the Challenge Athletes Foundation since day one. This is a team effort, and so it's amazing to see the progress. I remember back in 2006. When I first started getting paid by the national team, I would be getting $500 every 3 months. And that was our stipend. That was what we earned. And we were so proud of that. And now you look at the national team stipend, and it's, in the thousands of dollars monthly. Not only that, the most exciting part that I think that is just awesome is recently they announced that a Paralympic athlete is now going to receive the same amount of medal bonus as an Olympic athlete. And to me, that is a victory across the board. It's setting a new standard in Paralympic sport in the United States, because once money's involved, you know how that goes.
What do you know what those standards are, what the figures are, like what a gold medal?
37,000 for a gold.
And
now, Chris, I think that they should go back and do some retro payments. Don't you think?
I think that sounds like a retirement package. Really, that would
absolutely.
It would be perfect. Now we're talking about sport on the high level, and we're talking about victory schedules and things like that. But it seems like sport for you has a more pure kind of essence as well. What has sport meant for you? What does it mean in your life?
sports to me it's a way of life. There's no way around it. It's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. It's what keeps me excited when I wake up in the morning and get out of bed. It's what keeps me dreaming when I go to bed on what the potential is. And being a disabled person in the world, we often are presented with obstacles. We're presented with the things that we can't do. We're presented with the things that people don't think we should do. And unfortunately, that is put in our face a lot. And to be able to break that barrier and say, you know what? It's okay to be different. I am proud of who I am. Yeah, I'm missing my legs, but I can still go out there and kick your butt, and don't expect any mercy. You know what I mean? That, to me, sports is giving me that drive to prove to myself that I can do whatever I want. If it's an Ironman, let's go. If it's the Paralympics, let's go. That, to me, it's giving me the resilience, it's giving me the motivation, and it's giving me the joy of just being happy. Like, I absolutely love doing sports, and I don't think I'm ever gonna stop. I mean, when I stop, it's gonna be when I'm not fast enough. Now, who knows what that will be? But I want to. If I'm blessed enough to continue down the sports, I want to continue to do it, because it's, to me, it's a way of life. It's a way for me to reach people around the world. It's a way for me to show a young person in Africa or in Asia that they don't have to beg. They don't have to, live a second class citizen. They can become whoever they want to be. If you look at in the world, the disabled population is the biggest minority in the world, and we are the biggest group of people who unfortunately are looked down upon. I mean, if you go to Africa or any of these other countries and you're disabled, I mean, if you were born disabled in an African country, they're going to take you out in the bush and leave you there. And that is still happening today. So, at the end of the day, I just feel very blessed to be where I'm at, to be, a Paralympic athlete in the United States. But I also find that it's a duty to try to help my brothers and sisters around the world, because these guys. I mean, I went to Ethiopia last year, and I met some kids who were double amputees like me, and these guys were using Crocs as their prosthetics. That's what they had. They would walk on their knees in the dirt and mud and streets of Ethiopia to go to school, and they would come back, and they wouldn't know any different. But seeing what we have here in the States, you only feel a little bit guilty and realize that, man, you are blessed. But just because you're blessed doesn't mean you should just be blessed. You should use that blessing to help other people. So I'm very limited in what I can do for these people right now, but I really hope that when I get a little older and distinguished, I can able to reach out and really help more people. I mean, the Challenge Athletes Foundation has just done an amazing job at reaching challenge athletes around the world. I mean, and that's, to me, is if we can get a prosthetic leg or a racing wheelchair to somebody in Africa or Asia, and they can go out and make a Paralympic team. I mean, you're changing lives there, and that is powerful.
You said that for you, because it's also a personal journey too, right? That early on you had difficulty with the inspirational tag.
Oh yeah.
Was there a moment when you got to the point where you said, you know what, I can take pride in myself. I can take pride in who I am, in my body. Was there a moment that happened?
Not a pinpoint moment that I remember, but I do remember, after in Athens in 2004, after winning my first gold medal. To me, that was a very defining moment, because it made me realize that if I set goals in my life 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and I work towards these goals on a daily basis, that I could do it. And with that mindset, it really helped me overcome my personal challenges of just being insecure of who I was as a person. And, really being, in the spotlight, obviously a lot of times made me feel a little bit more comfortable with who I was. But I never liked to watch myself on TV or read anything about. I just didn't like to do that. Probably because I was, just insecure about myself. And when I would watch myself, I would always say, "Wow, why would I say that?" Or "Why am I walking like that?" Or "Why do I look like that?" That to me was not a positive way to be looking at life, especially yourself. And I think when I was able to accomplish finishing my first Ironman, it really changed a lot of things for me, because it just gave me that mental toughness of knowing that if I continue to do what I believe I can do, it could happen. And to be able to finish an Ironman in 16 hours and 6 minutes, it really gives you a great perspective on when you think you're having a bad day, or when you think your day is hard, or when you think your 2-hour workout is challenging. I say go out there by yourself in an Ironman and do an Ironman, and you will find something about yourself that you just can't deny. And when I did my Ironman, I realized that I had so much more potential in me. When I was in my Ironman and I was about 14 hours in, I actually stopped and laid on the ground. And this was probably at 9 o'clock at night. And just looking at the stars, mentally and physically, I was done. But when I got up and I ran the last 6 miles of that Ironman at like 9-minute pace. And that right there just showed me that, like, when you think you're done, you got so much more. And that's a powerful thing that I think everybody needs to learn, because there's a lot of excuses out there. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't, and it can't, and all that. And once you're able to cross that mental barrier that we all have, a whole new world opens up.
You've talked a lot about sport. You've talked a lot about Paralympic sport. You've talked a lot about your journey. You've not mentioned what I read was your favorite Paralympic sport. What's your favorite Paralympic sport?
Oh, I love wheelchair rugby.
Why is wheelchair rugby your favorite sport? And describe the sport if you can too, please.
I wish I could do wheelchair rugby. I would be out there, but I got my hands. I can't. But man, wheelchair rugby to me is just one of the badass sports out there. It's plain and simple. You got guys who have a very high spinal cord injury, or who are quads, who are missing arms and legs, and they're out there in a wheelchair, and they're going head on to each other and knocking each other out of the wheelchair. I mean, that to me that's the coolest thing that you could ask for. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. I have a lot of respect for the wheelchair rugby guys. I think they are awesome, and especially Team USA. We've done pretty good, but I know we have a good rivalry with Canada and Australia. But yeah, any chance I get to watch a nice wheelchair rugby match, I am there.
Awesome. Well, Rudy, thanks for joining us. Good luck as you proceed toward Tokyo. We have our fingers crossed for you. We understand it's going to be a difficult journey, but that to you, listening to your story, it doesn't sound like that's the kind of thing that's going to phase you.
Nah, the journey doesn't stop at Tokyo. We're continuing on, and as long as I can stay healthy and stay fit, we'll see how long we can go.
Right. So there might be Paris and there might be LA as well, which will be 2024 and 2028. So best of luck. Thank you for joining us. Good luck this coming weekend. I'd imagine you're going to turn some heads this weekend. That'll be fun.
I hope so. Thank you very much, Chris, and best of luck to you. I'm sure we'll be chatting soon again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rudy. Have a great one. Take care.
You too.
Bye.